Okay, this video is for Math 70, and in this assignment we're going to talk about algebraic substitution. And before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the order of operations. And if you took my Math 60 course last term, then this would be a repeat of some of that information, but it never hurts to have a little review. So the most basic forms of computation or arithmetic are addition and subtraction, right? Addition and subtraction, and they're opposite operations. One undoes the other. If you do repeated addition, you can think of that as multiplication, and that has an opposite operation of division. I use the fraction bar to symbolize division for a variety of reasons. And then if you do repeated multiplication, you get exponents, and the opposite of exponents, which are roots. Now, if I just put a parentheses at the top of this, this is the order of operations. Okay? You do the parentheses first, and then you do any exponents and roots, and then you do any multiplication and division, and then you save addition and subtraction for the last. And so the idea here is that you do the most complex forms of computation first, and then you do the simplest ones last. Okay? So it's important to understand that order of operations as we're going through these problems. So let's take a look at a couple of these. On the handout, in the first section, we've got values for x is -2, y is equal to 5, and z is equal to -4. In problem 2, we want to calculate y cubed z plus 10x to the 5th power. Okay, so I would recommend, number one, have a calculator that you're comfortable with and get used to using that calculator. That's an important thing to do. Next, the way that I approach these is I plug the numbers in and then I calculate them in pieces rather than calculating everything all together. So we'll have 5 to the 3rd power here, and then the z is -4. That's a times symbol right there. And then times 10 times -2 to the 5th power. So we don't really have anything to do in these parentheses, okay? So now we want to do these exponents. 5 to the 3rd power is 125. And if you're not sure, I've got the calculator right here. I'm going to use it eventually. Yeah, let's see here. And then -2 to the 5th power would be -32. Okay, so now we want to multiply, right? Because we've done all the exponents and roots. Now we want to do the multiplication and or division. In this case, we've just got 2 multiplications here. Let's see here. That should be 500. -500. 125 times -4, -500. And then over here, -32 times 10, -320. Right? The plus and minus is just minus. -500 minus 320, -820. Okay, so there's number 2. Let's take a look at number 4. Let's see here. Number 4, x cubed y squared. And then plus yz squared. Okay, so x cubed y squared and then yz squared. Okay, so again, let's do the exponents first. And it doesn't matter what order we do the exponents in. So this will be -8 and then 25. And then over here, -4 squared will be 16. So now we have to do the multiplication here and here. And again, it doesn't matter which one we do first. 25 5 times negative 8, that should be negative 200, and then 5 times 16 is 80. Negative 200 plus 80, if you're not sure, use your calculator, okay? We're all the way out at negative 200 on the number line, right? This plus 80 brings us back in this direction 80 places, and so we should end up at negative 120. And again, like I said, if you're not sure, just use the calculator, okay? All right, let's look at problem 6. And so you can see we've got all of these operations involved in these problems, and it's really important to get the complicated ones out of the way, and then the next most complicated, and then save those simplest ones for last. Okay. In problem 6, 7x minus y minus z squared over 2xz minus 1. Okay. So, with these fractions, what I recommend is calculate the top, calculate the bottom, and then divide. Okay? So let's go ahead and plug everything in. We'll have 7 times negative 2, and then y minus z squared, and then 2 times x times z minus 1. Okay. Now, something I want to point out here, when I was plugging in the numbers, and this is something people often get confused about, this minus sign right here came with the formula. This minus sign right here comes with the value of z, okay? And this minus and minus is going to make this a plus. 5 plus 4. Okay? And now, that's what we're doing. We're working inside the parentheses. The goal in the parentheses is you want to get it down just to a single number. That's why we don't really have to do anything here or inside here, because it's already just a single number. All right. So let's see here. I'll go ahead and calculate this too. This is negative 14. And then inside those parentheses, we ended up with 9. And then 2 times negative 2 times negative 4 minus 1. Now, notice that I calculated this negative 14 before I squared that 9. So I technically did go out of the order of operations, but it's not going to affect my answer. The order of operations mostly has to do with what to do when those operations are grouped all together. Okay, this one is kind of off on, these two are separated, and so I don't have to worry about it quite so much. We could have, we could have done it like this: 7 times negative 2 minus 9 squared, and then make that 81, and then negative 14 minus 81. Because that's what we're going to end up with anyway here. On top is negative 14 minus 81. Let's see, on the bottom, we want to multiply. Okay? Negative 4 times negative 2 is 8, times 2 is 16 minus 1. So this is negative 95 over 15. And these are both, this will reduce. You can go ahead and divide this on your calculator like I suggested a few minutes ago. Let's see what that looks like. 95 divided by 15. So this is 6 1/3, 6.3 repeating. Negative 6.3 repeating. You can reduce this fraction if you want to do it that way. 5 goes in here 19 times, 5 goes in there 3 times. So negative 19/3, negative 6.3 repeating. You can call it negative 6 1/3. Right, all three of those are correct. They're all the same number. Okay. All right. Now the second group of problems, we've got different values for our variables. Well, let's take a look at those. X, negative 1.38. Y, negative 3.14. And z is 4.22. So these will get a little bit trickier because of the decimals on here. It'll be a little bit trickier to calculate with, but not so terrible. So we start out in problem 2, 7xz to the third minus 3 times y minus z. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is plug these numbers in. The x is negative 1.38. The z is 4.22. That's going to be raised to the third power. Y, negative 3.14. Z, again, 4.22. Now, when I was talking about the order of operations in that last problem, I called this number 2. Oh, I see. It goes 1 through 6 and 1 through 6. Okay. On problem 6, a minute ago, I was talking about how I did that 7 times negative 2 before I did the exponent, and that was okay because they were separated. So this is where it's not okay. All right? Here, you have to do this exponent first before you do any multiplying. Okay? Now, you could multiply these two together. That's okay. But you can't multiply anything by this 4.22 until you raise that to the third power. Okay. Now, in the end, we're going to round off to the hundredths place. Okay, so that's 2 decimal places. So through this, we're going to generate a lot of extra decimal places. I'm going to hold on to probably 3 or 4 decimal places so that when I round back to the hundredth, I haven't lost any accuracy. So I'll talk more about that as we work through these problems. So 4.22 to the third power. This is going to be 75. I'll call it 151. And then negative 1.38 times 7. And the other thing is that I've got the full number here. I'll show you on the calculator here. I've got the full number on the calculator. Okay, and there's no reason to erase it and replace it with a less accurate number. So I can just go times 7 times negative 1.38. And that way I won't really lose any accuracy, but I don't have to write down those big numbers. So this is going to be negative 725.963. Excuse me. So, negative 725.963. And I've got that extra place value there so that when I go to round this off, because if you constantly round to the second place, in the end, your answer could lose a significant amount of accuracy. Okay, let's work in the parentheses here. Negative 7.36. So now I got to do negative 3 times negative 7.36. That's going to give me positive 22.08. And then add on that negative 725.963. That's going to give me negative 703.88. Rounded to the second decimal place, rounded to the hundredths place. Okay. So like I said, these are a little bit trickier because of the issue with the decimals. If you want to hold on to all the decimals throughout the problem and then round to the second place, that works too. But constantly rounding to the second place as you're working through this can affect the accuracy of your answer. All right, let's look at a couple more. Problem 4. Z minus y squared plus 3x y squared z plus x on the bottom. Okay, so let's plug these in here. Let's see here, z 4.22. Now again, this minus sign comes with the formula. This minus sign comes with the value of y that we plug in. 3 times negative 1.38 Then on the bottom, negative 3.14 squared times 4.22 plus negative 1.38. Okay, so let's follow the order of operations, right? We want to work in the parentheses first. This minus and minus make a plus. So that's going to end up, let's see, I'll put it over here. What is it? That's 7.36 again. That's going to get squared. Just write everything down here. Everything else in the parentheses is already simplified. Okay, so now I'm going to do these exponents on the top and on the bottom. Let's see what we get here. 7.36 squared. Okay. Let's see, what do we get? 54.1696, I'll call it. 54.1696. And let's see, I'll leave that alone. Negative 1.38. Now, when we square this negative 3.14, okay, I see people make this mistake frequently. They type into their calculator negative 3.14 squared. So the calculator interprets this using the order of operations, okay? And so it does the exponent first. This is not what we want, okay? What we want is negative 3.14 squared, which is negative 3.14 times itself. This is what we need to calculate, okay? This is going to turn out to be a negative number. This is going to turn out to be a positive number. This is the correct one right here, okay? So let me go ahead and square this number, 3.14 squared. 9.8596. This, which is incorrect, is negative 9.8596. And like I said, I see a lot of people make that mistake, and not just in Math 70, I see it in Math 111 and a variety of other places. Please don't do that, okay? If you're going to square a negative number, be sure to put it inside parentheses so that we do that correctly. All right, so 9.8596, and then what else? I'm just going to write this as minus 1.38, right? The plus and the minus make a negative 1.38, and there we go. Looks like we've got oh, I left off this 4.22. So let's put that in there. Times 4.22 and then minus 1.38. All right, so now we've got the multiplication to do. 3 times this, and then I got to multiply those two right there. So let's get the calculator going here. 3 times negative 1.38. So this is going to be 54.1696 minus 4.14 on top. 9.8596 times 4.22. So this is 41, I'll call it 6075, round it off a little bit, minus 1.38. And now let's just calculate these. 54.1696 minus 4.14, 50.0296. And then on the bottom, 41.6075 minus 1.38, 40.2275. Okay, that looks reasonable. It's always good to take a look at what you're doing to see whether or not these answers seem reasonable. And then we just got to divide. 50.0296 divided by 40.2275. And this comes out to be about 1.24, rounded to 2 decimal places. Okay, now this process of algebraic substitution is used extensively in the sciences. You know, the sciences have lots and lots of formulas about the relationships between, whether it's chemistry or physics or whatever you're doing, these things have relationships with each other that are numerical, okay? And so the scientists developed these formulas, and the formulas, here's a classic one, F equals ma, right? Force equals mass times acceleration. Well, if you know the mass and you know the acceleration, you plug them in and you can calculate the force. That's essentially what we're practicing for in doing this assignment, okay? Oh, don't want to erase that just yet. We got one more problem to do. Okay, let's see here. That x was negative 1.38. Okay, number 6. We've got 2yz squared minus 5z on top, 1 minus x cubed minus 8z on the bottom. Okay, well, let's go ahead and plug these numbers in. 2, negative 3.14, and then the z, 4.22 gets squared, and then minus 5 times 4.22. On the bottom, again, this minus sign comes from the formula, but the value x also has its own minus sign. Oh, I got to plug in z on the bottom there, 4.22. Okay, so let's work inside the parentheses first. Minus and minus make plus. And so let's see here. On the bottom, that's going to be 2.38 getting cubed. Okay, so I worked inside the parentheses first, right? Because that's the first step in the order of operations. Now let's go in and do these exponents. Okay, let's see here. 4.22 squared, 17.808. Okay, so this will be 2. Negative 3.14, and then 17.808, and then 5, 4.22, and on the bottom 2.38 squared, cubed, 13.481, and then minus 8 times 4.22. Okay, so now we've got the exponents out of the way, we got the parentheses out of the way, we got the exponents out of the way. Now it's time to multiply. Okay, so let's see here. 2 times negative 3.14 times 17.808 and negative 111.834. And then 5 times 4.22, 21.1. And then on the bottom, let's see here, 13.481 minus 8 times 4.22, 33.76. Okay, so negative 111.834 minus 21.1. Negative 132.934 on top, 13.481 minus 33.76. It's going to be negative 20.279. And let's go ahead and divide. 132.934 divided by negative 20.279, about 6.56. I actually don't really like to round when I've got a 5, but the problem said to round to the hundredths place, so this 5 will round this up to a 6. It's not all that accurate because rounding with a 5 is generally not a good idea. 4, 5, and 6, I don't like to round off. I like to round where I see 0s and 1s and 9s and 8s. Okay, so that's it for this assignment. And if you have any questions about this, please let me know. We'll start the Zoom conferences next week. And in the meantime, feel free to call or email, and I'll try to help you out as much as I can. Thanks.